This is why you've been getting a band 6.0 or less on your IELTS speaking test. I'm Douglas. I'm a long-time examiner for the IELTS writing and speaking test, and I'm here to help you get a band 6.5 or above on IELTS so that you can work or study abroad. One of the main reasons that people get a band 6.0 or less on IELTS speaking tests when they're trying to get 6.5, 7, or higher is that they've been focusing too much of their practice on part 1 of the speaking test. Is part 1 important? Absolutely. But for those of you who are trying to get those high bands, 6.5, 7, 7.5, you need to really, really practice part 3. Part 1 is the easiest part of the test. The examiner is asking you questions about yourself, personal questions. Even people who have not been studying English a long time or who have a poor ability in English are generally able to answer these questions. It's easy to talk about ourselves. The difficult thing is giving our opinions and our ideas about a variety of topics. If the examiner suspects that you are a high-level candidate, they're really going to be focusing a lot of their attention on part 3. So you need to practice this one the most. You need to make sure that you can talk about a whole variety of different topics and that you can give your opinion very clearly and in a very detailed way. Another reason why people are getting 6.0 or less in IELTS speaking is because in part 2 of the test, they are not answering the question that they're actually given. So what a lot of people do is that they have been given a topic where they have to give a story. They have to talk about the past. It's not always like this. Sometimes in part 2 they might say, describe an object in your kitchen that's important to you. Okay, but a lot of the topics are talking about a very specific point of time in the past. So for example, it might be something like describe a time when you watched a movie but you didn't really enjoy it. Or describe a time that you went to the park with friends. So they're asking you to talk about a very specific point of time. What a lot of people do, which is not good, is that they're just talking about something in general. If the question's about going to watching a movie, they're just talking about, oh yeah, I love watching movies. It's so fun. They're talking about movies in general. Or if they're talking about describe a time you went to the park with friends, they're just talking about, yeah, I love spending time with my friends. Sometimes we go to the park. The problem here is that you're using the present tense. This is not high-level English. This is the first tense that anybody learns in English, okay? If they're asking you to describe a specific time in your life, then you're able to show off a variety of tenses: past simple tense, past continuous tense, past perfect tense. This is not something that somebody who's band 4 and 5 candidate can generally do, right? So you need to be talking about a specific moment rather than something in general. Another thing that people are doing, which is giving them a low band score, is simply that they are not comfortable with the test. They think, okay, my speaking is okay. I'm not going to practice a lot. Or, when I practice, I get very nervous. I'm just going to do the test and just hope for the best. But when they do the test, they're extremely nervous. They stumble a little bit. They can't remember the word. They suddenly, well, what was the question he asked me? I see it. People suddenly, they lose their train of thought. They get, oh, I'm sorry, I'm nervous. If you get flustered, that's going to impact your score. You need to be very comfortable with the test. And not only comfortable with every part of the test, but you need to have practiced a variety of different topics so that when you get questions about that topic, it's not like, oh, geez, art. Yeah, I don't know anything about art. I never think about that. Okay, you're not an art expert, fine. But at least you have practiced this topic before, so you have some things to say about it, right? You don't need to be an expert, but at least you have thought about it and you have a few ideas in your mind in case they ask you about it. Another reason why people are getting a low band score in the IELTS speaking test is because they have this idea that to get a high score in vocabulary, we call that lexical resource, they need to force these high level words or idioms into what they're talking about. Now, to get a high band score, absolutely, you should be using, higher level vocabulary, idiomatic expressions, essential. But it's not good if you're just forcing them in there where in places where it doesn't make sense just because you think it will sound good. It has to be natural. I constantly hear people saying things like, they'll force in some idiomatic expression like once in a blue moon. This is okay thing to use, but if you're just putting it in some random spot, it's really going to stand out. And if it doesn't make sense there, then that doesn't help your lexical resource score at all. So learn vocabulary, but learn the context. When do we use it? Uh, the final thing that I want to say about how to avoid getting the band 6 or lower in IELTS speaking is that also related to speaking, don't repeat the same words again and again. You learn this great word, let's say the word is superfluous. This is a high level vocabulary. It's a great word to use. But if you're using that for every question, yes, I think that this would be very superfluous. The examiner is going to notice that. Maybe the first time you use it, oh, okay, nice word, you're thinking. But when you use it again 10 seconds later, and then 20 seconds later, and then 30 seconds later, that examiner is thinking, okay, that's not right. You got to use a large variety of vocab. That's what's much more important rather than just using this high level vocabulary. You have to use a variety of words and know exactly when you can use them. So these are some things that some little changes you can make to make sure that you're getting a band 6.5 or above in IELTS. If you like these tips, follow me. I'm going to be giving a lot more tips on IELTS, on writing and speaking, and everything else from my experience as an examiner. If you have questions, feel free to write them in the comments below. And you can also check out my website, achieveielts.com. I have some ebooks which might help you in your studies. Thank you and see you on the next video.